Welcome y'all to this wellness webinar with Sportable. Sportable is a nonprofit in the Richmond region of Virginia. We provide a variety of adaptive sport and recreation opportunities, as well as wellness activities for people with physical disabilities and visual impairments. We're happy to continue to grow our wellness initiatives, or what we call our Sportable wins, through different wellness resources and activities like these wellness webinars. And I'm so excited today to introduce Casey Cook. Casey has been interning with Sportable for about 3 months now, almost 4. She is an occupational therapy student from Murphy Deming College of Health Sciences. Hopefully I said that right. She is working on finishing up her doctorate degree and has been interning at Sportable doing her OT capstone project as part of that. So this presentation today is part of her capstone activities that she is helping continue to expand our wellness initiatives here at Sportable. So Casey, I'll let you share anything else that you'd like to say about yourself, but we're just happy for anyone tuning in live today or watching the recording later to continue to share wellness resources with our community. So take it away, Casey.
Thank you, Caitlin. I think you pretty much covered it all. But I do want to say that I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity to be here at Sportable. I created this webinar based on some other resources that I was creating, and I really found a big interest in the nutrition part of it. So I kind of talked to Caitlin and we wanted to make it a little bit bigger. And so thank you for being here for my webinar called Fueling Your Body Right. We are going to be exploring some basic nutrition. And I am going to be talking very generally about nutrition, kind of using guidelines from the CDC and the USDA. And so I did want to say, like, if you have any specific questions, specifically about yourself, to talk to your primary doctor or a dietitian or nutritionist about that. Okay. So, like I said, welcome and thank you for being here on this beautiful, gorgeous Friday and taking a little bit of time out of your day to prioritize your overall health and just learn a little bit more. So, a few things that we're going to talk about today. We are going to go over the basic definition of nutrition and its key concepts. We're going to discuss the 3 big macronutrients, what they can do for our body, and which foods we can choose in these categories to kind of help fuel our body the best way possible. We'll gain a better understanding of how to use the MyPlate resource, which is part of the USDA. We'll explore some strategies on how to make healthy choices daily, and then we'll also talk about proper fluid intake. And then hopefully, out of all that, you will learn something new. Okay, so to start off, what exactly is the real definition of nutrition? It is the process of consuming, absorbing, and using nutrients from food that are necessary for our growth, development, and maintenance of life. And so these nutrients that we are getting from our food fall into 2 big categories. So the first one is macronutrients, and these help to primarily provide energy to our body and help serve different pathways and functions throughout our body. And these can also be broken down a little bit further. So we have our proteins, our carbohydrates, and our fats. And we're going to talk about those a little bit more in depth in the next few slides. And then the next nutrient we have are micronutrients. And these are our vitamins and minerals that we get from our food. And these serve to protect and promote various functions in our body, including helping us to process the energy that we get from our macronutrients. And so, in comparison to our macronutrients, we need these in a lot smaller amounts, and they don't provide us with that direct energy. So the first macronutrient that we're going to discuss is protein, and the main function of this is to help build, repair, and maintain muscle, but it also helps us to feel fuller for longer periods of time. And so when we're choosing these proteins, we want to try to choose some that are lower in fat content. So those are chicken breast, pork, beef, and even fish. And fish is considered a very high quality protein. And this is because it's high in omega-3 acids. And we'll talk about that on the next slide. But it also contains many different vitamins and minerals that like calcium, magnesium, and even potassium. And then some other options that we can choose that might have a little bit higher fat content, but are still very good options for us are the nuts, nut butter, chicken thighs. And we can have these. We just want to make sure that we're doing those in more moderation. The next macro that we're going to talk about is fats, and this can actually be broken down into two different types. So we have our saturated fats that we kind of want to limit in our diet, and you can find these in commercially baked goods and pastries, donuts, cookies, and different fried foods. And before we keep going, I do want to say that our presentation today is talking about nutrition. So when I do use the word diet, I'm not talking about anything that you're doing to restrict different foods. When I say diet, I mean everything that we're including into our daily lives and what we're taking into our body. Okay. Um, these fats also play a role in our overall health by promoting good heart health and helping us lower that cholesterol. So an example, like I said on the last slide, of unsaturated fats are omega-3 fatty acids. And you can get these from different foods like fish, but you can also get them from chia or flax seeds, different types of beans, and even kale or spinach. And these help all the cells in your body function like they should, especially in your eyes and your brain. Some other things they can do is just help you manage your moods, fight fatigue, and even help control your weight by helping you feel more satisfied for longer. The next big category that we're going to talk about under macronutrients is carbohydrates. And this is the main source of energy for our body, but especially in the brain. And so it does this by providing fuel for our muscles, helping us maintain those blood glucose levels, and also provide storage fuel that we can use for later. Carbohydrates can also be broken down a little bit further into two different forms, which are complex and simple. And we're going to break those down in a sec. But when we're looking at our carb intake, this can depend on many different factors like age, gender, and our activity levels. Another important thing about carbs is that they contain fiber, which helps with digestion, it helps with weight management, and with our blood sugar control. And so one thing that I want to say is when many people think about carbohydrates, they immediately think about, oh, carbs aren't good for you. They may make me gain weight or they make me like feel gross. And this can be true for a lot of people, but it's more about the types of carbs that you're putting into your body. And so most people think bread, cookies, chips, and all the packaged foods, but carbs are in many other foods that can provide you with so much nutrients, and this can help us fight off disease or just make you feel overall better each day. So just making sure that when we are picking carbs, we're choosing ones that are going to contain the most nutrients. So breaking it up into simple versus complex. With simple carbs, these are very easy for the body to process and we can digest them very quickly. But they also cause a really high spike in our blood sugar faster. And so our body can process this and it will get our levels back down to normal. But after that, we may feel tired or we might even feel hungry again relatively quickly. And so we want to try to limit these because they tend to be empty calories for us. And so we're putting them into our body, but they're not really giving us much nutritional value back. But there are some simple carbs that are rich sources of vitamins and minerals, like fruits and some vegetables. And on the other hand, we have complex carbs. And so these take longer for the body to digest. And when they release glucose, they do it much more gradually. So the body is able to keep up with that process instead of having that really high spike and then really fast drop. And these are given their name due to the varying nutrients that they contain. And so we want to include these carbs at meals and snacks because they help maintain those healthy glucose levels and keep us fuller for longer. After all of that, I do want to say, just like before, that when you're talking about simple versus complex, it is okay to include both of these into our diet, but just make sure that we're doing it in moderation. So for specifically as athletes or just active individuals, it's okay to use the simple carbs to reach our optimal energy levels or just give us more energy in general when we're doing physical activity. And we can do this through things like sports drinks. So you have your Gatorades, your Powerades, vitamin waters, all of that different stuff, or your energy bars that you may eat like before activity. And that's totally okay. But like I said, we just want to make sure that we're doing it in moderation. So I included this little graphic of some examples of simple versus complex carbs. So you can see on the simple side that it's a lot of processed foods or sugary drinks. And then on the complex side, you have your fruits, your vegetables, your whole grain breads, and then some other things you can include over there are like your whole grain pastas, your brown rice. All of those are really good for you. And like I said, it is okay to include both of these. I just wanted to divide that up so you can kind of get a more visual of what each category includes. I also wanted to include this little chart on the recommended daily carb intake because, like I said, the amount that your body needs depends on your age, your gender, and your activity level. And so that's specifically what we're looking for in this chart. You can see with the light activity level that is more low intensity or skill based activities, you're going to need a lot less carbs than you are if you're doing your high or your very high intensity. And I did only include the daily carb intake, but there are recommendations for protein intake, fat intake, all depending on each category. So if you wanted to look at how much you should be taking in based on your age or your gender, there's charts available online for that as well. Okay, so that was a lot of words, and I know I talked really fast. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to slow down, but we're going to simplify it a little bit. And we're going to use the MyPlate diagram. So the purpose of MyPlate is to serve kind of as a reminder to help build those healthy eating patterns and help you to make healthy choices across all of the different food groups. So those include fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and even dairy. And we're not going to touch on dairy as much, but we are going to hit those four big main ones. And I do want to say, even though the MyPlate doesn't specifically touch on the macros that we just covered, it can be a good way to make sure that you're getting a good variety of all the different food groups. And all of the food groups do include the macros that we just touched on. So first we're going to look at fruit. And as adult men and women, you should be getting 1.5 to 2 cups of fruit per day. And this is because they contain many of the essential nutrients that we don't get enough of on a daily basis. So for example, you have potassium that helps maintain a healthy blood pressure. You have the dietary fiber that can help reduce blood cholesterol, aid in proper bowel function. And then you also have vitamin C, which can help repair your body tissues if you happen to get a cut or a wound. Some examples of this are your fresh fruits, your dried fruit, and then 100% fruit juice. You want to try to steer away from any of the juices that say fruit juice concentrate because that's not going to be as healthy for you. It's going to contain more of the sugars and the simple carbs that we talked about. Some ways that you can incorporate this into your diet is to include fruits at breakfast. So you can make yogurt parfaits or include some fruit in smoothies. You can take fruit on the go, like apples or bananas that are good for snacks. Or you can even make your own trail mix using those dried fruits and then adding nuts and granola into that as well. For vegetables, we want to eat between 2 to 3 cups per day. And this is because they also provide many vital nutrients. And a lot of these are similar to fruit, but it does also include vitamin A. And this is very important for keeping our eyes and our skin healthy and helping our body protect against different infections. Another important note is that they also are usually very low in fat and calories. Some examples of things that you can choose looking at the dark green vegetables, you can choose broccoli, spinach, kale, other leafy greens, or you can choose some of the orange vegetables like carrots or sweet potatoes. These are all very good choices, but it's not an all-encompassing list. There's many, many different vegetables that you can choose from. Some ways that we can incorporate these into our diet are just starting your day with veggies. So adding some vegetables to an omelet or a breakfast wrap, or trying a different stir fry where you add many different vegetables like carrots, cabbage, mushrooms. You can even add tofu in there if you want to get a really easy protein source. You can go for a dip or a dunk using different vegetables. You can do cucumbers, cauliflower, carrots, anything that you dip in like a sauce, or hummus. So now looking at grains, we do want to eat roughly 6 to 9 ounces of grains per day, but we want 3 to 4 of those to try to be whole grain as much as possible. And so these do have a lot of the same nutrients that are vital for our body. They have the dietary fiber, but they also have vitamin B, which plays a role in our metabolism, and it can even help our body release energy from the macros that we talked about. Also contains iron and then magnesium, which is really good for our bones and muscles. Some examples of whole grains that also have some example of grains that also have whole grain options are bagels, different breads. You can do English muffins, or even tortillas have whole grain options. And we can incorporate these into our diet by adding them in at breakfast with a oatmeal or just having some whole grain toast. You can also swap out your sandwich bread like I talked about. There's many different options like pita, tortillas, different sliced breads and rolls. And then you can also experiment with new grains like whole wheat pasta or brown rice. Next, looking at proteins, we need to have about 5 to 7 ounces of protein per day. And this is because they serve as building blocks for our bones and our muscles, cartilage, skin, and even our blood. And we want to make sure that we are varying these choices because that can provide our body with a huge range of nutrients to keep it functioning how it should. So some different proteins that we can incorporate are red meat, poultry, that really high quality protein of fish, different cooked beans, eggs, nuts and seeds, or tofu, which can be a really good vegan option. And we can incorporate these into our diet through including them protein in our snacks. We can use peanut butter or other nut butters to dip our apples or our celery in, or we can use it as a spread on crackers. We can add chicken or shrimp as a protein to our salads. Some other good options for that are chickpeas or black beans, which are a budget-friendly option as well. Or if you're feeling really crazy, you can get creative with beans or peas and lentils. You can make a chili with the beans, make some type of soup, or even just have some lentils as a side. There are lots and lots of good recipes online if you're feeling curious about that. Just some other helpful tips to remember, just in general, try to choose whole foods over processed foods. So all of the fresh fruits, the fresh vegetables, fresh breads, all of our meats, we want to choose those more often than our packaged foods. Try to limit extra sodium in foods as much as possible. You want to aim for a variety of colors in our food. So if we're incorporating into most meals all the different categories that are on the My Plate, our plate should be really colorful. And then we also want to increase our water intake as much as possible. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So with all of us being involved in Sportable, we are active in one way or another, whether it's directly playing sports, going on a walk, doing some type of exercise or yoga. And so I wanted to include some information that was specific to being active. And so it is important to know when and what to eat before you are going to do any type of physical activity. But I also want to reiterate that knowing when is just as important as knowing what to eat. So if you know that you're going to be doing some type of physical activity, pre-game or pre-activity, you want to eat roughly 2 to 4 hours before your event. And if that event just happens to be really early in the morning and you're not going to wake up that early before you get there, this can mean eating a really good and nutritious meal the night before to fuel your body for the next day. And so this meal can look like many different things, but you want it to be really high in complex carbs and lower in the proteins and sugars. And that's because those carbs are what's going to fuel your body to last out throughout that whole activity. And then also, just a good rule of thumb is to avoid the rich and the greasy foods because these are a lot harder for our body to digest and can be really heavy on our stomach when we're doing physical activity. Some fluid recommendations for us. Fluids are obviously very important for maintaining our hydration, but as athletes or people who are physically active, we want to make sure that we're consuming them before, during, and after any physical activity to prevent that dehydration. And so our body is made up of nearly 60% water, but during a workout, you obviously quickly lose that fluid as you're sweating. A sign of dehydration can be thirst, but we don't want to wait until we're super, super thirsty to have our first drink. A good rule of thumb is to take a drink every 15 to 20 minutes, but just to make sure that we're not drinking so much water that we kind of feel groggy and really full. The best fluids to drink to rehydrate or hydrate before events is water, especially for your shorter events, because that just replaces exactly what you lost from sweating. But for those longer events where you're sweating a lot more, you're putting a lot more out of your body, you can benefit from those sport drinks because they provide our body with the electrolytes and other carbohydrates that we may have lost. So I also wanted to include some different examples of balanced snacks that we can eat before activity, after activity, that include a good carb, protein, and a fat. So some examples, I'll just read a few. Non-fat yogurt with raisins and walnuts. You can do a combination of an apple, a low-fat cheese, and almonds. Or you can include some banana, honey, and peanut butter on whole grain toast, which is really good. And it's important to remember and make a good habit that whenever you're eating these snacks, that you kind of include water or other fluids to keep that hydration up. It's a good rule of thumb. Okay, so why was all of this important? Everything that we talked about is super important because fueling our body with the right nutrients will allow our body to function at its highest level and its most optimal level. And when we create these healthy eating patterns, we can help lower our risk for developing serious health issues, help manage some pre-existing conditions that we may already have, or prevent further complications in the future. But I do want you to remember that practice makes perfect. You cannot make all of these changes overnight, but incorporating little changes over time can make a huge difference in the long run. Okay, I have some additional resources here, and we're going to try something since we have extra time. The website that I got all of the information about the MyPlate on was from the myplate.gov, which is by the USDA. You can actually go on there and perform a quiz and put in all estimates about kind of how much you're getting of each category in there. And then it'll give you a program and recommendations, and then also free access to recipes, some different tips on eating healthy on a budget, how to make a shopping list and kind of execute that. And then there's also other tip sheets on there about many, many different categories. But the main thing about doing this quiz is that it actually gives you a code, and then you can get the MyPlate app on your phone, which is very easy to access. Put the code in there, and then you have access to all of the information and recommendations that they have given you on the website. So let's see here. Can everyone see this? Okay, so when you go to the main page, it's going to look like this, the home page. And like I said, there's many different resources, so you can go through and learn more about the different categories we talked about. There's the healthy eating on a budget. You can look at different, whatever life stage you're in, and see the recommendations they give you for that. And then here's the tab that I was talking about, the resources. So they have tools. And you'll go here. And you can go to the MyPlate plan. So you'll hit get your plan, you'll do a quiz, and we can kind of go through this. So it looks like this. It's personalized based on your age, sex, height, weight, and physical activity level. You'll start the quiz. You'll answer. I think it should take you no more than 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes to answer. And then you'll get a whole plan with recommendations. And like I said, a lot of different tip sheets for you to use to your benefit. Okay, let's. Okay, we made it to the end. Thank you all for being here. Like I said, I'm so happy that I was able to share a little bit of information with you. And I do have a little quick survey. You can scan this QR code, but if you're on your phone, we are going to share a link to the post survey to your email. So be looking for that. I do appreciate it if you would fill out the survey. It's really important to me. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
Before we jump into questions, I just wanted to say thank you, Casey, for that awesome presentation you just shared with us. So much great information, and thank you for showing the MyPlate tool too. It's just really, really awesome. Before we jump into questions, I'm going to say some things to just wrap up this recording on YouTube so that it'll cut after I finish speaking. But anyone who is watching this recording later on, thanks for joining us to learn more about nutrition today. If you're interested in learning more about Sportable, you can find our website at sportable.org. And then we also have some information on there as well about all of our wellness initiatives or Sportable wins. Really just trying to provide you the tools and resources and opportunities that you need to live a vibrant, fulfilled, and healthy life, whatever that looks like for you. So thanks again for joining us today if you're watching later, and we hope you go on and be healthy. So thanks, y'all.